Hello everyone and welcome to the third and final part of Making a Home in Silvertown, a guided walk in association with Newham Heritage Festival and the Access and Engagement team at Birkbeck University of London. My name is Matt and I'm your tour guide for this sequence of 3 videos that lead you on a historic guided walk around Silvertown, one of East London's most rapidly changing neighbourhoods. This part of the walk might take about half an hour, depending on how often you stop to enjoy the scenery. You should be able to follow it without problems if you haven't done the first 2 sections, but you may wish to check out the opening of the first video, as it includes broader background about Silvertown, as well as general advice on getting around. This is the route we'll be following in this section, beginning at the left near Pontoon Dock Station, finishing on the right at London City Airport. If you've just completed the second section of the walk, you should be on Bramwell Way under the viaduct of the Docklands Light Railway, a little east of Pontoon Dock Station. Just wait there a moment so that others can catch up with you, please. If you're doing this leg as a separate walk and you're at Pontoon Dock DLR, what you need to do is this. Walk east from the station, following the DLR viaduct, until you arrive on Bramwell Way, a narrow street parallel to North Woolwich Road. Continue to where a footpath leads south into Barrier Park, which we explored in the previous video. Now that we're all in the same place, follow Bramwell Way further to the east, and where it ends, take the footpath north to the main road, North Woolwich Road. Cross over carefully, then turn right, following North Woolwich Road further east. You'll come to a roundabout where you should turn left. Before long you'll reach a second roundabout. In the centre of this roundabout is a 12-metre tall sculpture. It's called Athena, named after the ancient Greek goddess of wisdom. The statue is by Nasser Azam, who was born in Pakistan, then moved to London with his family when he was 7 years old. He grew up here in Newham, so is basically a local lad. Athena was unveiled in 2012, a month before the London Olympics began. Nearby London City Airport was a major route for athletes and spectators from around the world to reach the Games, and the sculpture is a nod to the Greek heritage behind the Olympics. Athena is the tallest bronze sculpture in the UK, though the bronze is plated to give it a silvery appearance. Now continue walking north onto the Connaught Bridge, which crosses over the channel between the Royal Victoria and Royal Albert Docks. The bridge itself has an ingenious design, enabling it to pivot around so that vessels can move unimpeded between the dock basins. Take a look to the west and you'll be able to see along the whole length of the Royal Victoria Dock. Branching off the dock basin to the south, on this side of the Millennium Mills building, you'll see the entrance to Pontoon Dock, after which the nearby station is named. Unfortunately, it's hard to catch more than a glimpse of Pontoon Dock from this side of the Royal Victoria, because other views are blocked by the height of the remaining mill buildings and the hoardings and plant life all around the site. Originally known as the Victoria Graving Dock, the facility was used for repairing and overhauling ships. Using a hydraulic system, vessels in the graving dock would be raised out of the water on pontoons, then shunted into narrow dry docks to give workers full access to their outer hulls. Current plans for Silvertown Quays involve the pontoon dock being partially filled in to create more room for building. Hopefully enough of it will survive to serve as a reminder of this history of ingenuity. The grain silo that you see in this picture is still standing but is out of sight. It's the only surviving one of 4 such silos around the pontoon dock and will also be allowed to remain in the new development. It would be great to look over the opposite side of Connaught Bridge as well, but unfortunately there's a partition of railings down the middle of the bridge, which might be dangerous to climb over when traffic's whizzing past. Please stay safe and head back down the bridge, crossing the road where the railing's no longer an obstacle. Then head north again onto the bridge, where you can look east across the Royal Albert and King George V docks, as well as London City Airport. The Royal Albert Dock, directly ahead of you as you face east from the bridge, was conceived as an extension to the Victoria Dock and was opened in 1880 by the Duke and Duchess of Connaught, after whom the bridge you stand on is named. The dock included important innovations such as railways leading directly to the edge of the dock, as well as refrigerated warehousing. Dockers weren't necessarily grateful for this. Working in the cold of the refrigerated units was quite an unenviable task. To your left, on the northern side of the Albert Dock, you'll see elements of regeneration. Towards the far end of the dock is the Docklands campus of the University of East London, which opened in 1999. The dock actually has a long history of academia. Just north of Connaught Bridge was the original home of the London School of Tropical Medicine. This was affiliated with the Royal Albert Dock Hospital, the better to research cures for illnesses contracted by sailors overseas. The school has since been amalgamated into the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine in Bloomsbury. In the middle of the dock's north side is Building 1000, which since 2004 has been home to many back-office functions of Newham Council. There's been energetic discussion locally about whether the building's cost, around £70 million, is made up for by enabling council staff to move out of buildings elsewhere in the borough and by letting workers from different departments collaborate more easily. There are ongoing plans for further regeneration on and around this dock basin, with a focus on attracting businesses from China and other countries in the Asia-Pacific region. This is in part a response to Canary Wharf, which houses a concentration of businesses from Canada and the USA. The idea is that with East Asian nations becoming more active in global commerce, there will be a demand for an equivalent community here. This might well lead to more people involved in these East Asian companies choosing to make their homes in this neighbourhood of Newham. Between the Royal Albert and the King George V dock to the south lies the runway of London City Airport. This strip of land was previously occupied by dockside warehousing. The runway is unusually short for a commercial airport, despite having been extended in 1992. The airport was first proposed in 1981 by Reg Ward, Chief Executive of the London Docklands Development Corporation, the government body then tasked with regenerating this part of East London. At the time there were doubts about whether there was enough space here for a runway, so a publicity stunt was concocted. In 1982, a small 40-seater aeroplane landed at Heron Quays near Canary Wharf. Heron Quays at that time was very like the land where the City Airport's runway was later built, a narrow strip of derelict quayside between two dock basins. The successful landing demonstrated that the proposed airport could work, at least on a technical level. Indeed, if you're on a plane taking off or landing between these stretches of water, and you're fortunate enough to get a window seat, the location gives you magnificent views across the dock basins. Beyond the runway is the King George V dock. This was the last enclosed dock to be built in London. The opening of the dock by King George V himself in 1921 was an important symbol of British confidence after the First World War. The construction was organised by the Port of London Authority, the government body that had taken over management of London's docks from the struggling dock companies in 1909. From the beginning, the dock was equipped with state-of-the-art facilities including electric cranes and refrigerated storage. There were also 5 different railway lines making their way around the site, helping to transport goods in and out of the warehousing. The refrigeration meant the dock could specialise in handling perishable goods like fruit, vegetables and frozen meat. A great advantage of the dock is that it had its own lock entrance off the Thames from the east, offering more convenience for ships than the longer journey upstream to the entrance of the Royal Victoria. This image shows repairs taking place around the entrance during the time when the dock was derelict. The lock was so large that in 1939 it proved able to admit the biggest ship ever made in Britain at that point, the steamliner RMS Mauretania. The lock entrance of the George V is now the only access for boats into the Royal Docks complex. Now walk south back to the roundabout. At this point the plan for the walk is to head east along Connaught Road to look from a distance at the Tate Lyle refinery to the southeast of here. If you're keen to get close to the refinery though, I should let you know about an alternative route. To use this route you should go south again, back to the first roundabout you encountered, then strike out to the east, following North Woolwich Road, then Factory Road. This takes you right next to the refinery. The reason I'm not recommending this path is that there's a high wall along the northern side of Factory Road, so once you're on that street, the only way off is either to completely retrace your steps, or to follow the street all the way to its end, which is some way off in North Woolwich. However, depending on your interests and energy levels, you may wish to attempt this. From the roundabout with the sculpture, go east, then turn right at another smaller roundabout. Follow Connaught Road as it curves around to the southeast, past the entrance of Hartman Road. Over the wall on the southern side of Connaught Road, you'll see a Victorian church tower. This belongs to St Mark's Church, which is the home of the Brick Lane Music Hall, a theatre troupe who work hard to conserve and expand the music hall entertainment traditions of working-class East London. Another building that used to be near St Mark's but no longer exists was the Public Baths. In the early 20th century, at a time when most locals didn't have bathing facilities at home, this was the only place in the whole of Silvertown where you could go to get a proper wash. Following Connaught Road, eventually you'll come to a junction where Parker Street branches off to the left, just before the legendary snack bar, the Girl of Sandwich. Albert Road continues eastward from Connaught Road. The buildings in this part of Silvertown are largely unimpacted by the regeneration efforts seen elsewhere, and the area retains a lot of the character seen here in 1975, when the Royal Docks were still operating. In the distance you can see part of the Tate Lyle sugar refinery at Thames Wharf. To the right of this refinery was the site of the India Rubber Gutta Percha and Telegraph Works Company, whose founder S.W. Silver gave Silvertown its name. Seen here from a different angle, the sugar refinery was founded in 1878 by Henry Tate, a merchant from Lancashire. It originally specialised in making sugar cubes, and Tate was the first businessman to manufacture these in the UK. Tate is remembered now as a generous philanthropist, most famously through funding and leaving his art collection to the National Art Gallery of British Art, which was renamed the Tate in his honour. The refinery specialised in processing cane sugar, primarily imported from the Caribbean. You might remember from the first part of the walk that in 1921 Tate's company merged with the one founded by his rival Abram Lyle to form Tate and Lyle, and both these companies post-date the abolition of slavery in the British Empire. However, during the founders' lifetimes, many Caribbean sugar plantations, especially in Trinidad and Guyana, were farmed by indentured labourers, often from India or China. These workers would contractually renounce some of their rights and freedoms, binding themselves to a plantation for several years in return for passage to the Caribbean. It wasn't slavery as defined in law at the time, but neither was it a working arrangement that we'd want to emulate nowadays. And here's some of the company's branded packaging inside the refinery. The company had a strong reputation locally for good treatment of its workers, who included a large number of women, especially around the middle of the 20th century. This workplace offered better wages than other factories in the area and provided leisure opportunities such as sports clubs. The refinery has also made contributions to other efforts over the years. For example, during World War II, when not much cane sugar could be imported to the UK, pigs were farmed on the site to help the country overcome food shortages. Now walk north along Parker Street until you reach the junction with Drew Road. To the right, you'll see the rear of Drew Primary School. Its predecessor, Drew School, seen in this photograph, used to occupy an imposing building further to the northeast of here, but this was demolished in 2003 to make way for the extension of the Docklands Light Railway past London City Airport. It's just one example of how people in this area have been obliged to adjust to the airport's presence. Now go west along Drew Road, then follow it to the right. Where this street meets Camel Road, turn left, then pause where Camel Road meets Hartman Road. Look east down Hartman Road, which is the approach road to London City Airport. And this is how the view from your current location would have looked when the airport was under construction in 1987. On the right of the picture you can see the housing on Drew Road and Camel Road that you've just walked past. This should emphasise just how physically close the airport is to the local community. Managing the airport's impact on Silvertown has been an ongoing concern. Indeed, after the airport was first proposed, there was a very active campaign against it in the area. Concerns then and now include traffic and the noise of planes. To this has been added wider discussions about the role of flight in aggravating climate change. To limit local impact, takeoffs and landings are restricted to between 6:30 a.m. and 10:30 p.m. on weekdays, with stricter limits on weekends and bank holidays, but this might not be much comfort to any locals who have to work nights, of course. This photo was taken only 9 months after the last one, from a little further east along the road. When compared to the previous photo's largely empty space, this shows the sheer speed at which the airport was constructed. The foundation stone was laid on 2nd of May 1986, and the first flight landed here just over a year later, on 31st of May 1987. Commercial flights then started on 26th of October that year. On the right of this picture you can see Drew School, which as mentioned has since been demolished. One imagines it must have been exciting but also quite disruptive for the students to have such a major construction project next door to their classrooms. London City Airport is currently expanding its facilities. This includes making the terminal building much larger, lengthening the passenger pier from which flights are boarded, and creating a taxiway for aeroplanes parallel to the runway. These changes will all increase the number of flights that the airport can handle. Owing in part to the need to work around the needs of a functioning airport, the expansion won't be fully complete until around 2030, taking several times longer than it did to build the airport in the first place. There were legal challenges to the expansion on the basis of noise and environmental damage, but these didn't succeed. Against such risks must be weighed the advantages of having this resource on one's doorstep, as well as international flights being within walking distance for locals. The airport is the largest private sector employer in the borough of Newham, and nearly 2/3 of its staff live here in East London. Also, the airport's presence as a direct transport link to the wider world is in a sense continuing Silvertown's tradition of welcoming travellers and goods from around the world, helping to keep the neighbourhood cosmopolitan and exciting. And this, I think, is something we've seen throughout this series of 3 videos. The tensions and sometimes the balance that can be struck between the different needs of everyone who has a stake in this area. Big businesses like the dock companies, factories and airport, wider national concerns acted on by government, people overseas connected to the area by trade networks, and lastly, but perhaps most importantly, everyone who's chosen to make their home here in Silvertown. This seems a good note on which to wrap up our walk. If you need to get to public transport, follow Hartman Road for the east and you'll reach City Airport DLR station. If the UK's current situation with coronavirus permits it, you could also head past the station and enter the terminal building, where refreshments are available. I hope you've enjoyed this walk around Silvertown, a unique, exciting and rapidly changing part of East London. I hope you have a safe journey home as well. Please do check out all the other online activities that are part of Newham Heritage Festival, and if these videos have stimulated your interest in learning and research, please check out the wide range of courses available at Birkbeck University of London's campuses in Stratford and Bloomsbury.